Giving me guidance to go to a council later today and kind of share some things that are going on. This has kind of been 90 days for me as administrator, and there's a lot going on. So I was gonna, there comes to be an administrative briefing spot at the agenda review meeting, and up to this point I've really not said a whole lot, but we've kind of got a lot on our plate, and I thought I'd kind of brief them, and so I thought I'd share some of those things with y'all. A lot of it, is just a normal transition. I think I've got a list of some, what the number's up to, 15 key management positions that will transition over the next 4 years for the city. And of course, at the top is my position, and we've posted a deputy administrator spot. And so, and Keith is going to retire at some point here in the near future. And so looking at leadership for the city and how it's structured and how the organization reports is kind of the most important thing you do when you hit the ground. And so we've proposed to the mayor a structure that kind of aligns the departments that are dealing with a lot of the development issues, the downtown issues that everybody's familiar with. I could rattle them all off, but it's security, it's pedestrian movement, and bicycle movement, car movement. It's the relationship of the port. It's the scape study that's going on. It's parking issues with DIB. We're going to the DIB meeting tomorrow, Keith and I, and having some conversations with them, how they fit in. It's the CRA and their role with DIB and everyone, and how that fits into our organization. We've had noise issues pop up. We had a gunfire situation where it brought us to look at the cameras that we have downtown and where they're positioned and security. We've asked the police department to beef up that when we get our next graduation class and we get fully staffed for PD. We're going to look at a downtown patrol that will be in addition to what we have right now. So those are issues that are important. The mayors and the county have talked a lot about the homelessness issue and panhandling, and as we attract more and more people downtown, how do we deal with our homeless population? There's ongoing conversations with that. The latest issue is something called complete streets. This is important for the mayor, and so we're doing a lot of research right now on what that means and whether we need additional staffing to implement complete streets ordinance and what that does. Obviously, in the strategic planning area, a huge project with the ST projects dominated a lot of Mayor and I's time over the last 3 months. And he was obviously went personally to thank FDOT, the secretary, for the $20 million commitment that they made here in the last week or so, which kind of brought us over the top in terms of that project. There's a lot of internal things that are going on. I've mentioned the organizational chart. I'll probably pass one out later today for council. I've already talked about recruiting. Our pay plan hasn't had a look at it in a long time, so if we're going to be recruiting 15 key management people, we need to make sure that we look at our pay and whether we're competitive in the marketplace. If we're going to recruit good people, you have to be competitive in that area. The issue of the HR manual and the issue of an appeal board and how we deal with grievances has been brought up in this room before, and so we're taking a close look at that, and the mayor will implement that down the road. With the new attorney, we've taken a look at the way we handle public records requests. That function's been moved around. We're trying to figure out where the right place is. The normal place is with the clerk in her office. We've had some initial conversations with her, but as usual, it's all about staffing and how you keep up with the basic responsibilities in the clerk's office, so that conversation will go forward. The mayor's committed to do kind of a cultural survey. The transition team will meet a week from today with a final meeting, and that report will come out. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of ideas in that report. The mayor and I talked about how we hope to take that report and kind of work with council and create kind of a strategic plan for the city going forward. So we may have kind of a workshop all day kind of thing with council and transition team members and the mayor, and look at getting that report kind of aligned. But part of that, I think, is going to suggest that the mayor do some additional surveying with employees and kind of identify what his culture is like and what improvements we need to make there. You know, we've had some issues, internal conversations about ADA accessibility. That ties into a lot of the downtown issues and things, but you know, we'll probably do a little more work and maybe restructure how we deal with we want to make sure that our handicapped folks can get around town. And we've had some initial work going on with our sidewalks for ADA accessibility, but we need to take a look at how we internally handle our ADA issues. Those are the highlights here, so I won't steal much more of the mayor's time. I'll be around to answer any questions that I might have. Pause and see if anything I've said made sense to anybody up to this point.
Well, the obvious question is, what are the 15 management positions?
I've got a list. I'll
Okay.
pass it out this afternoon. I'll share it with you.
All right.
I mean, you want to go down the list?
Yeah, please.
Me, Keith, when the time comes, the position I mentioned already, deputy administrator, so the structure shows an administrator and 2 deputies. We have, unfortunately, Dennis Fleming, who's our sanitation director, moved down here from Maryland, has decided to go back to Maryland, so we'll be recruiting right now for that. I'll put a plug in for Vernon, that he's decided to move on. If any of you know anybody in the media that's got talent and skills that want to deal with city issues, we posted his position as well. The city attorney's office continues to transition, and Susan will recruit both another assistant county attorney as well as a legal assistant in that office. And Rusty Wells is long in the tooth, and he will be retiring probably in a year or so, and will be filling that position as well. You know, Dick Barker is looking at retirement. His is a little further out, but you know, the way you deal with situations, if you plan right, is you get a deputy and you train them well, and then when the director retires, you have a smooth transition. So we've got a deputy finance director position that we posted and we're filling. The shock to me was Dan Flynn at the airport. Says he's only got a year or so. Dan's I think a great leader and doing a fine job for us at the airport, and I'm trying to convince him that he's too young to retire. He's only in his mid-50s, and I'm a lot older than that. So I don't know what it's going to take, and obviously with the ST project, I'd really like to have Dan stay around and see that one to the finish line if possible.
Did Dan give any reason?
He's got his 30 in. He must have started working when he was 15 or something, but he, you know,
Wow.
it's hard to believe. So, and all of this is planned. I mean, there's not discipline in this mix. This is just normal. We've just got an old management team here that is going to turn over. One of the shocking things that I learned when Grover and I were in St. Augustine last week to watch our police department get accredited is how young a police force that we've got. Almost half of our deputies are just a couple of years old, and we're going to bring another group of graduates in here in May or so. And so we've got a very young department. And by the way, we're real proud of our police department. It was quite a thrill for the mayor and I to go over there and be part of that process. Very proud of Chief and his crew. Pensacola Energy, director there in 22. Director's been there for quite a while. We have a risk manager that is already retired and coming back and working as a retiree, and so risk management's a critical area for us. I don't think we've taken a real close look at our health insurance, property casualty insurances in a while, and I think we'll take a close look there and look at that. Our purchasing director, George, has plans in 2023 to retire. And of that, our budget manager in finance is looking at retirement. So finance, you know, it's your people and your money that's most important. So, you know, a lot of changes going on in the finance department, and want to make sure that the transition of those folks there goes well. So that's what's on my list, and I may not know of all of them. That's just based on the people that I've talked to in the 3 months that I've been here. There may be some other managers that have plans that I'm not aware of.
Thank you.
You bet. I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Before you leave, have you taken a look at parks and recreation?
I'm not aware of any plans for, in terms of the staffing there, you mean?
Just in the operation, I've had problems with them, as I explained to the mayor. My publication has never been recognized by Parks and Recreation, and I've been here 28 years. And I was just wondering, has anybody looked at how they do business, particularly in marketing and advertising?
I have not had a chance to do that. I think we've been tied up with soccer fields in Parks and Rec for the last 3 months, so I'll let the mayor talk about that one. But I can ask Brian about it if you want me to. I haven't had that conversation with him. You're talking about how we recognize some of our partners?
Now, let me be more specific. He has failed to advertise in our publication since we've been in operation. And as I explained to the mayor on one occasion, it was in the previous administration, but I was told face to face that I would not receive advertising because I wrote a critical ad against Mayor Hayward. And that gentleman, I think, is still here. So I'm just wondering what would be my situation in regard to,
Turn it over to the mayor.
yeah.
Admiral, I think once we're coming up, we've had that discussion with Brian Cooper, that we need to be open to everyone. And I think when we get next to the next round of advertising, that's been a directive. The problem is obviously some of these contracts are toward the future, but I've had that conversation with Brian Cooper, that my expectation, and he's told me that is the expectation as we move forward. So if something doesn't change in the next round of advertising, I'm gonna be shocked, but I want you to know. But right now we're in that round. We've already contracted. When we come back up, we're going to be open for everyone. So those are the discussions we've had. First off, Chris, thank you for being up here. I did have the opportunity today. There's a travel symposium or a transportation symposium going on over in Navarre, and the FDOT Secretary Thibault. It's not Thibault, it is Thibault. He is a French Acadian, but not from Louisiana. He is from Boston, which is kind of funny to have see his name and hear his accent. But he does pronounce it like our friends to the west. So as Chris says, it's Thibault, like his favorite quarterback over there. A little joke between us. But
He's a fine young man, Tim Tebow.
So, but I met with Secretary Thibault today, and again, one thing is just offer appreciation for their support and what they provided to ST. So I appreciate him being there. Because what was interesting was one of the things he wanted to talk to us about, and one of the things that came up was a real discussion about safety and looking at differing ways of doing transportation, multimodal. I was in with a number of both private citizens and commercial interests, as well as governmental officials. I did think it was pretty funny. We started talking about complete streets, and Nathan Boyle is a good friend of mine who is the commissioner over in Okaloosa County. Said that, especially he represents the north end of Okaloosa, he said their idea of complete streets was anything with asphalt, but clearly our idea with of complete streets is a little bit different in dealing with multimodal safety, both bike and pedestrian. Something that has become a very important issue here in Pensacola, the city of Pensacola, and we've seen some challenges. We certainly want to keep moving forward. I know it's the Secretary's intention. He talked about Vision Zero. We obviously want to get there. We have a long way to go. We are having some challenges we've had, but I think part of that is we want to begin to play offense. Next Monday, as Chris said, we're going to have the transition report from the transition team, and I think it's going to start moving forward. I've had a chance to look at a little bit of things that were turned in, some of the rough materials that were turned in. I know in dealing with walkability and parking, we are going to see some things coming forward that will address some of the problems that we've had, some of the accidents that have been happening, and ways that we can improve. One of those is going to be moving forward to address complete streets and to begin to put staff in that direction and begin to go out and hire staff. I think Chris said a little bit here earlier. That's one of the things he and I have been talking about in the executive team, is moving forward to hire somebody. Again, right now we're still evaluating. I think, from my belief, that person needs to be in planning, somebody that is helping us look at this, how we can move forward and better direct what we're doing. But we are going to make a commitment that we will be having people at the city that will be looking at this, and employees that will be addressing walkability, bikeability, parking, those kind of issues that we have in an urbanized area, and really looking at complete streets that are more than just streets for cars. So that's really sort of, I feel like, after getting a new attorney, the most significant offensive position we've tried to play since we've been in office. It's something we believe is necessary here as we go forward with project our Vision Zero. So we definitely want to be moving in that direction and making ourselves better. The conversation we just had in Navarre was a lot about that, and I know the Secretary said that is a priority of what they want to do. I thanked him also. It was just good, as I told him, to have somebody from the administrative office in Tallahassee here in the Central Time Zone, and I certainly reminded him that Governor Scott and his administration was very good to Northwest Florida and came over here a lot, and I certainly was hoping his signal, and I think him being here so early in office, and what Governor DeSantis has been here in Northwest Florida, I hope that will continue, and that is my expectation. So we were very excited to have him discuss a number of transportation issues that we're doing, and again, some of them looking here at traffic, and Pensacola wasn't the only one addressing that, but I was very proud that we're still the lead in what we want to do, and I wanted to announce today that we are going to make an initiative to move forward in that complete streets, and we're going to be hiring staff that will be evaluating that and finding ways that we can do a better job. There are a couple other things that did happen since we've last met, since it has almost been 2 weeks. I did want to say, first off, a huge appreciation to Dennis Fleming. I guess you heard from Chris, he's going to be leaving, but I wanted to thank him and his staff. He's done a great job since he's been here, and I'm sorry it's an occasion with his family that he needs to move back to Maryland, but I think he's done a great job here with sanitation. I want to also, Fred Willis, I was with Kevin Ford and Ronnie, went out on the trucks this past Friday, and just wanted to tell them how much I appreciated being a part of the team and seeing what's going on. There are some things that we obviously need to continue to do moving forward. We certainly will be investing in our rolling stock. It's important. I had the chance also with Doug Rosmondo to check out the fleet out there, and what we're doing with fleet and taking care of that large rolling stock out there. So we just set a new motion. Those things have been there. The fleet's been there almost 30 years and haven't been renovated. So we're going to be renovating what we're doing with our building with fleet, and moving some things around, making us a little bit more efficient in how we take care of our vehicles. And so I was very excited to be there with Doug and discuss that. The other thing I wanted to do is it was already mentioned earlier, really give a huge congratulations to Chief Tommy Leiter and his staff. They were reaccredited. We've had accreditation before. 2 years ago we lost it. We did get reaccredited just last week in St. Augustine. Chris and I did drive down there for that. They were very appreciative of us being there. I think it shows a lot of work that Tommy and his staff has done. And I think it was also recognized while we were down there, just as what was said, how new our police force is, and how young they are. And again, it sort of emphasizes why we need to continue to keep doing training in that department, continue to keep working with that department. They're doing a great job, but they're doing a great job with an awful lot of new people in there. And so I'm very proud of the work they've been able to do. I also want to give a huge congratulations to Hope Lunsford, who runs our dispatch. Dispatch was accredited for the very first time last week. So she's done a great job with dispatch, and they were simply accredited for the first time. There are, I did want to recognize Admiral Leroy this week. We will be recognizing the 55 JC baseball team, and at the meeting on the 28th. That would be it's the end of Black History Month, but it's taking a little bit of time, but we're going to get it done here before February ends. We're going to get that recognized. We certainly recognized them at the county, and I think the city of Pensacola needs to do that. This comes in line with some of the things that we've been discussing. Really emphasizing and looking at some of the things historically that African Americans have contributed to this community. So we're looking forward to that on the 28th. I also know I met with Marlon, Dr. Williams, and I think Keith and I met the other day talking about some other things that we want to do with a couple things at Bruce Beach, as well as with the Passage Monument or marker that we may be doing. We're still trying to find a location. We're definitely looking to do a ceremony at the Plaza de Luna at some point when we can get one discussed. But those are some of the things we want to continue to emphasize holistically what our history is, and we'll continue to keep moving forward with that. Those are some of the things that are going on right now with the city. I think Chris sort of outlined we have a number of different initiatives that are going on. So there's a lot of work that's going on right now in the city, and we're just trying to move forward on all fronts. But I'm more than happy to take any questions that you might have, and we'll start with you, Dave.
Thanks. Mr. Mayor, the legislature is considering a bill that would outlaw Florida cities from becoming sanctuary cities, and I was just wondering where your position is on that.
You know, our issue is we're going to be consistent with federal and state law. We're not looking to necessarily push limits one way or the other. I said that when we campaigned. We would follow the law of what it is. At the same time, I do believe in the ability for local rule and home rule, but at this point, it would not be something that I would be looking to contradict a federal law, and I don't think that's our swim lane necessarily. But I tend not to like any rules that try to force home rule or what we can do. We ought to be able to set our own agenda and what we want to do going forward. But it's not my belief at any time at this point that we should be doing anything that is inconsistent with federal law or state law related to immigration or other things that we end up dealing with.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
What's the status on the petition drive?
Derek's petition drive?
Yeah.
The city is not involved in that. I mean, Derek would have to answer that question.
Well, we asked the city attorney to give an opinion whether or not it was a valid, have we gotten any opinion on that?
I haven't talked to Susan. I'll talk to her tomorrow for the executive meeting. I'll be happy. I mean, the challenge is, and the charter does allow citizens to do that. It's not a city initiative. We will comply with whatever end on the other side that we have to do. And I know Derek has been pursuing that. I wish he wouldn't, but we are pursuing forward again with all of our things in our relationship with ST. I don't totally understand some of the reasons that he's doing it. He says a variety of things with money, but the money that was being allocated, part of it was related to radios, which we're not going to end up buying. Part of it was rolling stock. Part of it was lighting, but again, Dick thinks we'll be able to come back and make up enough funding for that. I also wanted to comment. I've commented to him. I mean, it's certainly the things he's asked about, bike ped and a variety of other things. Our goal, as we said here today, is to get started on that. I mean, that's something we wanted to do. We put it as one of the 11 parts of the transition, and it is our intent to move forward with that, regardless of what he does one way or the other. Our issue is we want to address the right things for the city of Pensacola. We believe bike ped's part of it, but we don't believe it's the only thing. You've also got to be looking at the economic future of this community and of our citizens. I think we had the discussion with Secretary Tebow just now when we were there. I thanked him for what he did, mainly because all of us that were there were people from Okaloosa County, people from Bay County. This area has believed that aviation is something we should be in. For 20 years, it's been a targeted industry. However, this is just the first time this, what, 20, I came back here in 95, so what, 24 years later, this is the first time we've really broken into that industry. I think it's not just gonna be something for Escambia County and Pensacola. I think that's gonna spread to Okaloosa, Walton, and also to Bay counties as we move forward.
Have you heard anything yet definitively from ST about whether they are happy with the new terms given back by Triumph?
ST is moving forward, is my understanding at this point, and we are trying to put a lease and get going. They are very interested in moving forward on Hangar 2. They have some contractual needs that they need to get that hangar moving as fast as possible. So we are moving at this point as fast as we can, and my understanding is they're moving along on their negotiations, and we'll hopefully, Chris, have everything for the 14th.
That's our hope.
So we're shooting to have everything with ST signed off and brought to council on March 14th.
Groundbreaking when?
Sometime in the future. I believe there will be people here from Singapore on March 5th. I believe that's going to be dealing with a lot of the workforce training as they try to kick that off. So it's not a groundbreaking, but I do believe somewhere in the late spring or something we will have a groundbreaking. But there will be people, there will be executives from Singapore in town on March 5th. I know that's, I think, really trying to kick off their workforce training programs. But they do, I know whenever I talk with Stephen Lim and Bill Hafner, they are very anxious to get moving on Hangar 2. Like I said, they're moving forward with contractual obligations on their side that necessitated this move. So they're chomping at the bit. They got new business that they've signed on, and they want to find a place to put it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, have you had a chance to talk to some of the business owners who have complained about the work being done down on Palafox Street and how it's affecting their businesses?
I have. We continue to work through some of that. I sent something to Keith Hoskins with Gulf Power and asked if there was an ability for us to do night work. Obviously, there are some residential people in the area, but for the most part, on Palafox, it's a lot of businesses. If there's an opportunity to keep from interrupting businesses, I think we've seen what Palafox has done in a retail store-wise, and it's been great, and it really has led to the renaissance of downtown. I believe that the improvements that are being made related to our power are going to really propel us forward, but there's no doubt while this is going on and the construction is happening that it is very disruptive. It's very disruptive to those merchants. I've heard several of them complain to me about it, and we certainly want to find ways to help out, and I've sent a letter to, or an email to Keith Hoskins asking him if he would evaluate. I basically forwarded a letter that I received, an email I received from a constituent, and just said, hey, this might be something that could help both you and them at the same time. In fact, it is amazing to me. I was talking to some people in road construction. They've told me on the interstates and big things, big projects, that they've gone from almost a few years ago they were doing no night work to now they almost exclusively do night work. So is there the ability for some of these places for us to do something at night and be able to do some of that work, and so we can have the space back open, or at least late morning if we could have an opening, so that by the afternoon it is less disruptive to traffic and to the businesses that are there. I've certainly asked that question.
Where's the city at as far as expanding the escape plan for the west of Joe Patty's?
We're in the process of signing off an agreement with them. I can do that as the mayor. We didn't have to go to council, and we're getting that done. We had some, there were certainly some limitations within that, but we have worked that out, and we've worked with Scape, and I think right now it's been sitting with Susan. I saw last week, Lee Altman with Scape and Susan were going back and forth on the contract. Ours is a little bit different. Obviously, the city's a little bit different than the Studer side, so there are some things that we would typically have in a contract that were not in the Studer contract, or the Silicon contract. So again, we simply are changing a few of those, but my understanding, I think by the first of this week, it should be ready to go and ready to sign off.
Are you aware of like any, new developments or anything that's gonna be happening on that side?
You know, at this particular time, I'm not, but I know there's a couple of things that we have going for us right now over there in that stretch. We would love to see a way to connect the water more to Sanders Beach and the opportunities we have there. I think we do a real good job at Sanders Beach, but is there the ability to find you know, I think one of the things that they're gonna be looking at is connectivity. Is there a way we can connect people? If we can get them connected from the bridge landing to Bruce Beach, is there a way we could get them all the way over to Sanders Beach? And you know, there's some things that are looking at right now. We have, I know several of those pieces they're all private pieces, but several of them are for sale. But right now, I believe almost the entire waterfront is owned by one individual at this time. So, you know, if we're going to be moving forward with plans and thoughts, it would be best to talk with those people before we end up having to deal with a number of different owners at this time. So we, you know, again, we've asked that they look at it, and we think it's worth looking at the plan. But what we would love to see is some way to bring people all the way through. And we have a great asset at Sanders Beach. I was there for a private function on Friday night, but it is really a true treasure down there, and it is a great asset to have. And if it could be more connected to downtown, you know, now's the time for us to look at it. And Jim, I mean, you've been involved with that. I think connectivity is certainly one of the things that they want to do. That's one of the initiatives. James Lima was in town, I think it was last week, and I walked with him in DC Reeves. We talked about some things that were on Main Street, and you know, it was interesting. He looked at the Pat and Leslie dollhouse. You know, he asked, he was like, "What is that?" And I said, I'm going to be honest with you. When I was a kid, I used to think that was where we had some people who were vertically challenged living there. But you know, I found out it was a replica house. But you know, he said that is a great amenity. You should be inviting people to come in there. I've never thought about it my whole life. It's just been fenced, and the fence has always been closed. But it was interesting to hear his perspective from coming from outside the community. He said, "Why don't you let people go in there?" And we actually had some discussions about doing some things moving forward with some historical markers that were there. But certainly the one that's dealing with the Passage Monument and being in that location because that is one of the things that happened with Pat and Leslie. So again, you know, as we look forward, it just comes to it was interesting. He said you want things that are where people can walk and there are things of interest, and he said that was one of them. And I think it's sometimes great to have somebody look at something with fresh eyes. It's one of the reasons, you know, Chris keeps talking about how fast he can leave here. I continue to say I'm glad he's here because you know, for me, I know the whole area. I've been here. I know the history, but sometimes I have to wonder: do we see things in Pensacola only because it's always the way we've seen them, or you know, is somebody said one time, is it only? It's not crazy to us because we see it every day, or if you came from outside the community, does it look crazy? So it is nice sometimes to have people from outside the community come in and look at something and say, you know, this is either consistent or not consistent with what they see across the country. So, you know, it is good to have other people's eyes look at things. Jeremy?
Yeah, council's gonna receive an update soon on the master planning process for the properties at the park and acres. Have you guys gotten a preview on that?
I have not at this point, but we have been working with Jeff Speck, who's doing that for them. I guess I just got in office when that was about to be moving forward. And so I had dinner that night when he was in town. He told me about this group that meets, and I'm going to in Charleston. You actually have to do homework. We have to submit a project. So they were in town. The group, I can't think of their name. I can't remember their name exactly. They were in town and looking at it, and we are going to be submitting that project. So I've got to do a bunch of homework for a presentation that I'm going to be making to other mayors and other city people in Charleston later this month. And certainly I know that Jeff is connected with that group. I'm sure he'll be bringing some stuff forward here shortly to us. I'm excited. It's one of the things we discussed with James Lima when he was in town. We walked him through that and talked about, the importance of getting the master plan. The idea, we have a lot of green parcels there. We'd love to see something developed there moving forward. It was interesting though. He did say what I think as a commercial, I've been in commercial real estate for a while. He said you really need some more residential over here. So I think for us to really unlock the west side of downtown, we're going to need something comparable to something like a Southtown. I don't know if that's the one that's going to be where the school board building is, but I think that was what was critical for us to unlock a little bit more on the west side. Some of the development opportunities there needing some mixed use and more residential downtown. I think it's a good thing for us. I think there are people there's a demand clearly for more residential downtown. I think it's good for us in the city when you end up having a district where you already have all your amenities and you have a lot of things going on. It helps us. It's more urban infill. So I think there's some excitement to it, what it could bring as we move forward. But I think that was interesting. One of the things that came out from the discussion I had with James Lima.
Do you have any concerns about that? You talk about urban infill. There were some concerns expressed at last week's town hall about gentrification. Do you foresee any? I mean, Lou,
Well, I think they're
talking about putting a moratorium on infill.
Well, there are two different parts to that. One is he's talking about in neighborhoods and lots until we have a program, and I think. Again, we also talked about the fact that some of the things he's talking about doing with lots may give us an opportunity to address some of the affordability in those areas. And so I think that may happen. My understanding, again, the gentrification where you get problems is where you take existing housing stock and take it down. If you're dealing with green space that is already either for a variety of reasons, there's no house or anything on there. If you're taking that and making it more productive, typically you're ending up getting more mixed income. And even Commissioner May spoke in favor of mixed income. I know that's what he's been wanting to see more. He believes that'll be successful. Certainly he thinks if you concentrate poverty into one area, you've got to be able to create mixed neighborhoods. But obviously we don't want to move people out. We want to find ways for people to be here. I think part of whatever happens, you'll end up having to have some of those things. I know that was one of the, the development that happened over there at the park over, the Veterans Park over there next to there.
Oregon.
Correct. I know that's the idea. They needed to have some portion of that was dealing with affordable. So I think you want a true mixed income opportunity. You want those, you don't want to replace the neighborhood. You want a place that the neighborhood can be with other people in there, and so that you get a better mix of what you're doing. And so we don't want to make it where we're running people out. I think for those kind of infill opportunities, we'll continue to work in. But I'm talking about more of a either apartment condo kind of style, similar to what you have in Southtown. I think that kind of density on the west side would create more demand for retail and other things that we've seen be successful on Palafox and other places if we could move it to the west side.
Do you think a Southtown-like complex over there at the school board building, that would not encourage gentrification? Would that not be the seed of gentrification that would not allow lower income housing to the west to survive? You'd eventually creep that direction?
I think the challenge is what communities are going to find is you can't be growing. You want to be growing, and I think when you talk about either green spacing in the county and sprawl, if you want to stop sprawl, you've got to grow in. I think as you're growing infill, I think there's going to be a challenge, but I believe what cities should be doing is finding ways to be able to keep people in those neighborhoods that have been there. But bringing in new people is not necessarily. I know when HUD was here, they said they didn't see that necessarily as a problem. They thought that actually enhances neighborhoods.
What have you learned from the soccer debate?
I think what have we learned? I think we've learned we need to be out and engaged with our citizens and trying to find something. Since the beginning of since my time taking office, we've gone out there twice now and had 2 meetings with the neighborhood. I think we've been able to move. Nope, not every. I don't think people are absolutely going to like or dislike what was out there, but I think they feel better about it going through. And I think some of the changes we've made, I think, make it more palatable. But it doesn't mean they're going to like it. No, I don't. I think that's always part of change. I do think the meeting the other night was good in the sense that I think it also kind of showed what is happening. The real reason that I think this sort of came together is that one. The CEO for the Y said, the Y and the city cannot continue to necessarily compete. It's not being good for either one of those groups, and that if we collaborate and work together, we're more likely to have a quality project that's out there. In fact, if we don't somehow do that, then the Y could be gone from that location altogether. And there was discussion about what would happen if the Y was gone from that location altogether. It's certainly, much like what you've seen with Pensacola leaving that area, it's left a vacant building. You don't know what may come in there, and you'll have much less control. And then in a public situation that we've been able to have this discussion. So again, I think at the end of the day, the important part of the process, and we wish it had been done earlier, was people engaged with the neighborhood, and at least we've been able to find ways to mitigate some of the impacts from the very beginning. I've said we want to meet with the neighborhood and figure out how we can mitigate impacts. But at the end of the day, the opportunity for both the Y and the city is to find ways to not necessarily compete, but collaborate. And if we collaborate, I think we'll have more opportunities for amenities we can provide to all of our citizens. And I think we're working on that.
How much in a debate like this, how much does the neighborhood have say in what happens in their neighborhood?
I think neighborhoods always have say. I mean, we're figuring out what's there, but I think I want to be careful about 2 things. That Hitzman Park does not belong to Scenic Heights. Hitzman Park belongs to the City of Pensacola. So when we make decisions about Hitzman Park, we have to make decisions about Scenic Heights, but we also have to make decisions about the City of Pensacola. So I believe any of our parks, we've got to think like that. I mean, all parks are, they find themselves in a geographic location, but they ultimately are all part of the City of Pensacola. And then I think that's a challenge that we have to work in, is what's going to be best for the city, and then how do we take that and how do we manage to make the best we can for that neighborhood. I think the opportunity to work in collaboration with the Y at the Vickery Center is a real opportunity. It enhances perhaps so many of the programs we do in Northeast Pensacola, and those neighborhoods all together. All the things you're hearing about Langley and the current Y, Rick, it talks about it being on a small 2-lane. Well, the Vickery has 2 4-lanes that go by there. It has much better access, ingress, egress. There's just a lot of things that are better for the delivery of what we want to do. Plus, we already have a gym, a great quality gym there, and we have a pool there. To try to go build another pool, I think that, if you could do it, if it was financially feasible to do everything, to build the kind of building that we'd have to compete with the Vickery, you would have to take out almost every tree in that area. There's a lot of discussion about trees, and again, we were able to significantly shrink the impact of what we did. We moved from 200 trees down to 68 trees. And I think when the Y director was talking about what you would look at, you would have taken, he basically said we would have taken out almost all the trees at the Y. So at the end of the day, I think the product will be better. But this is a challenge. We're going to leave a lot of Hitzman Park. It's going to be wooded. It's going to be part of the neighborhood. It's going to have, we just invested in a brand new playground there. So we are doing a lot of things for Scenic Heights, but there's a component of that park that is the City of Pensacola, and it operates the way it operates for the city. Unfortunately, I wish we had more field space at Vickery. I would have put more fields there if I had more field space. But I have lacrosse, football, baseball, in soccer all competing for those same fields, and I've got to move one of them out of there. So we're going to be moving soccer, and that's simply the decision that was made and the easiest one to move.
I wanted to follow up about the complete streets. For a lot of people who don't know what complete streets are, people throw that out a lot. Why is that important? Why should people care that that's a priority?
I think complete street, the idea of what it is to look at a complete street. It's not just about roads. It's about other things. It's about mass transit. It's about your bikes, and it's about your pedestrians. All of those different users use a road. So again, I jokingly said, coming from the county's perspective, where you have basically sometimes dirt roads, as jokingly as Nathan said over there about Okaloosa County, he said a complete street's one with asphalt. So the idea is that the real complete street is not just the street that's built for the cars, it's built for every other use that we do on there. What we see in urbanized areas is we want to encourage a lot more walking and biking. If we can encourage either mass transit, walking, or biking, we put fewer cars on the road that use up the asset we have. And again, everything works better if we can get people out of just using single car experience. I'm first to say I'm guilty of that. I took a single car over to Navarre and back. That wasn't very efficient, and I realized that. So I'm not saying we're not still going to be doing that. But where we can, we need to find opportunities. This is also the reason that I support some of the additional, looking at residential in a downtown area like that and into that density, is when you do that, you end up better able to utilize your walking. You're better able to utilize things that don't encourage car usage, and it's just better overall on both our environment and also the resources that we have. So, I think that's one of the reasons that we're looking at complete streets. The problem that we have is, we've done such a good job of building streets and building them for cars and building them for cars to go fairly fast, that they aren't really compatible for people to be able to walk across. We all know what happened on West Cervantes, but West Cervantes isn't the only street that we're having problems with. We've had the problems on Pace, we've had problems on other streets in our community. So, we had 9th and Tahar, we had an accident the other day. So we have other places in the city, 9th Avenue, we have a lot of those challenges. So, again, we're trying to make those roads safe for vehicles, but safe for bikes and safe for pedestrians.
Were there any other takeaways you have from the stuff you've seen from the transition team besides complete streets?
I really haven't seen everything they've come with, so I'm looking forward to it. I've heard the discussions. I think you're going to see an emphasis of what we start our campaign on neighborhoods. I think neighborhoods clearly are saying some of these things that they want to be a part of. We want to engage neighborhoods. We continue to want to do that, much like what happened with the soccer field. We want to make whatever we're doing the best possible one for that neighborhood. We think we can have success. But a lot of those neighborhoods themselves, when we were over there in Woodland Heights, they want a sidewalk for safety in their neighborhood. So you're seeing a lot of that, some of that pedestrian needs spill over not on just the main roads, but into actually neighborhood roads as well. So again, I think neighborhoods is going to be a big area that we're going to focus on. I think obviously budget will always be important. As Chris said earlier, your money and your people are the two biggest things you have, so you want to take care of those things. I think I'm looking forward to some of the efficiency processes. I want to see what we could be doing better, what Christy Device is looking at and what David Peden is looking at, how we can deliver our services better. I know that Connie Bookman is looking at public safety. We've clearly said that's an objective going forward, both for police and fire. So again, I think every department will have something. I talked on the radio this morning. We have 11 people working very hard to put this report together. and a 12th that is overseeing the whole thing. And by the way, that 12th person oversees these things for people across the country, multi-million-dollar companies. He's doing it for us for free. So, I think this is a very good thing. I think it's really almost a strategic plan is what I think when we get the final product. I certainly didn't anticipate that going forward when I first started, but the more I've talked to it, the more I talked with Quint as he went through some of this, I think we're going to get really kind of a strategic plan. I want to say thank you to the team. They spent a lot of time. The month of December, they were in City Hall almost daily working with our staff, going through stuff. The month of January, they were out in the public almost every day having a meeting with somebody. And really, they spent much of February trying to consolidate and put their whole papers together and get them consolidated. So they've worked hard. I know several of the people on there, and I've seen them, and I see one of them in the back with Brian, and I'd be remiss if I didn't again say, how are we going to deal economically? I think economic opportunity is huge. If the city wants to sustain itself, we have to have economic opportunity. So I'm looking forward to getting the reports back, and I think they're really going to help move us forward.
So when people talk about the transition team's report, they talk about low-hanging fruit, but what's the most ambitious thing you're expecting to see out of that?
I was very clear with everybody I met with that we did want the things that were immediate that we could do. But I also told every single person, Brian's there, I've said, put everything in there. There may be things, every single person I've said, I said, put it in different categories. I want you to think about things we could be thinking about here 3 to 4 years away, 5 to 8 years away. And then I don't want you to be scared to put things on there that we may never ever get to, but put them on there because they're things we should be thinking about. As we look at that, those are the things I want to evaluate and see what we can do. But there's no doubt there's going to be some things that we certainly don't get into during the time I could be mayor, and we might not get to for 50 years. But if we don't start thinking about them, I don't know that we'll ever get there.
Greenhouse gas emission inventory, that was on the climate report's recommendations. Is that something, it was kind of like the baseline recommendation?
I think there are things that we're looking at. That's one of the reasons I think we're looking at how can we be more complete street? How can we be more multimodal? How can we encourage people to walk? How can we encourage people to bike and go other places in the car? It does two things. One, it helps us be a better environmental community, but it helps us be a more healthy community. That's what I continue to be talked about. People say, our environmental health is also impact our physical health, and there are two things that we could do better in this community. So, again, I'm not saying we're gonna. As a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting. Later this year, I'm going to go to some cities that worldwide that are recognized for being leaders, and even they are like, hey, I don't think we can get to this whole we're gonna totally quit getting out of greenhouse gas by whatever. I saw one of those cities said they only wanted to be at 50% in like 2050. So, I think that's probably a more achievable goal. I think more moderate, but I think you got to be making movement in your in your decisions and in your sort of your policies going forward if you want to achieve that. But I'm not here to say we're gonna quit driving cars or a variety of other things. Now that's not going to happen. But I do think we need to be more cognizant, and I think as we become more cognizant and we change our rules to reflect that, I think what you'll see us doing is a better job of producing what it is we say we want to produce. Yes, Lisa.
Well, talking about cars and driving downtown, have we looked at creating an ordinance that prohibits the booting or towing of vehicles on private property?
We've again, those are some things we're looking for. If those are the things that I was told that that was one of the things we could do, we could look at. It's been brought to my attention before, but if those are things we want to go forward, that's one of the reasons we would really like somebody on the staff that is really looking at some of these issues. And I was very clear to say this person's not only looking at complete streets, They're gonna look at parking as well. We have a lot of issues we want to be working with the DIB. One of those is parking. It continues to be a challenge. It's probably, you know, the soccer has some irate people, and I totally understand why. But generally, the thing I get with the most consistency of complaints about is parking. So it is something we've got to do, and you know, those are things I've heard as well. So if there are things we can control and we need to do them by ordinance, let's start doing them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.